time to rejoin the conversation. All right, and we are back, and okay, here we go. Normally I would say party politics, but today we are talking about something slightly different.
Been nut politics this last damn week.
Honestly, we talked about politics for a whole year. I'm giving it a break. We'll get back to it.
Yay.
But from the time we were little, we admired and even imitated heroes and secret agents and fairy tale creatures, and sometimes even cowboys, but there was something that we gravitated to in that way. And I guess today's question is, what is it about us that makes us want and even need to believe in these kind of stories and these kind of figures? And two, like, when you were young, what was the thing that you were, just enamored with on that level?
When I was little?
Yes. I was not going to start with you, but would you like to start?
I didn't really have, I grew up with Star Wars. So we always...
And you were post Wonder Woman, weren't you?
So
No.
were you like enamored with like Princess Leia or just Star Wars in general?
I don't remember. I was like the only girl in the neighborhood. There were two of us, so we always were more tomboyish. But I don't remember just being like, I don't know. I don't remember really being that like caught up in. My mom used to like to say that I like to dress up like princess, but play in the dirt.
Okay.
So.
You're a practical princess?
Apparently. I just don't remember, I know my brother really liked it a lot, but I don't remember ever, Superman and, we watched Wonder Woman. You're talking about Diane Prince? Not Diane
TV
Prince.
Show.
What's her name? That played Wonder Woman.
I know.
Oh my gosh. Carter.
Yeah, Linda Carter.
Yeah.
Linda Carter.
But yeah, we watched all that, but I don't remember being like, ooh, I need to have my Wonder Woman outfit. I don't know.
Don't you really think, though, Wonder Woman was probably for, especially back in the 70s, that was a lot of young kids, women, girls. That was somebody they could relate to.
Yeah, I think it's like if you asked our children's generation, they may look at it differently, but we spent so much time using our imaginations and playing outside and doing other stuff that it wasn't so tech driven to where you're watching it and seeing it all the time.
So when you were out, playing, did you, some people play Cowboys and Indians?
Yeah, we played Cowboys and Indians, and we played, but it really was just more of a, we did, but not like, we just played tag and kickball and went to the creek and caught frogs and snakes and
like real tomboy stuff.
Yeah, like real kids. I was around boys all the time, so,
What about you, Dave?
I don't know. Me and the Keller boys always used to hang out by the tracks and watch the trains go by. We had an old railroad track beside it. We could ride our bikes on it, and there were dips in the gravel so we could jump our bikes and fly on our bikes and crash on our bikes and tear each other up and get in fights and take pennies and nickels and quarters and tape them down to the railroad tracks until the train would go by and make them about 6 inches long, flatten them right out. These are all things that we were into, but Jackie hit on it. We did not have but 3 TV channels, and we had to create our own fun, our own games, and we all had our sports games. So you had baseball, you had football, you had frisbee, you had basketball, you had all these different things that you could play. But we played games like kick the can, we played games like tag, we played wiffle ball. So, we had all these activities as neighborhood kids that we were just constantly into. And we lived in a day where, our mothers would turn us out of the house first thing in the morning, and we were off and running. A lot of times our dog was with us. We didn't have to chain our dog up, and then all we had to do was check back in for lunch. You better be home by dark.
Shoot, we didn't even have to check in for lunch. We just had to be home by the time the street lights came on. And if we weren't,
you don't get home by the time street lights are on your ass.
It was but we usually told my mom where we were going, since she would have had to come look for us.
But we had our imagination, and we did have our Saturday morning cartoons. And I think, if anything, we emulated some off of that, and we had Batman on during the week. Batman would come on, so Batman was obviously a character to play. Johnny Quest was one of our favorite cartoons that we can remember, and so that was really pretty cool. Johnny and his partner were always getting in trouble and getting out of it.
Now, I can say we probably played like imagined cartoon characters more than we did like.
But even that is what I mean. These characters.
Well, I don't really
stories.
picture like He-Man as being a superhero.
I think it all kind of lumps together in an odd way. You're not necessarily trying to put a cape on and jump off of stuff and try to fly.
Yeah, but we used to do like Thundercats.
Yeah, but if you were out doing the Thundercat thing, or out, I have the power. Like if you were actually, you were caught into a story that really captured your imagination.
And
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
What is it about these stories because they never really leave us.
Right.
I find myself, I don't want to be, He-Man or anything like that now.
I do.
But still, well, you're a different kind of person.
You're just different.
You're just different.
I am different.
Yeah, but I do still find myself, fascinated with, the Star Wars movies, or any of the superheroes movies for that matter. It's still I'm not trying to emulate those things, but those stories still fully capture my imagination.
Real quick though, one thing that I will say, that as a young man, I was really into James Bond.
Absolutely, and I still am.
That was something that really fascinated me, and I will honestly say that James Bond movies created an interest in girls for me. True, because you always got the girl.
Shaking and not
And
stirring.
one of them was Raquel Welch, who obviously became my early childhood fantasy, which all podcast land knows by now. And I still find her a beautiful woman. So those were fun things to think about. They're happy memories for the most part.
But yeah, and I definitely include James Bond in this whole conversation.
I think it's just about, having that imagination. Like now, your imagination is in phones, in the box, and video games. Like you don't have to come up with an imagination on your own. It's already created for you through technology. But back then, you use your imagination to become an Optimus Prime or He-Man or whatever. And going outside, like right after I would watch G.I. Joe or something, I'd go right outside and try to be G.I. Joe.
Right.
And be king of the mountain. I think it was just about being revered.
King of the mountain. I forgot about that. We used to play King of the Mountain.
Yeah,
Somebody built a house and had dirt.
I used to throw girls down the hill. It didn't matter. I wanted to be in control. So I think it's just about being revered, wanting to be a hero.
Yeah. Do you think that's something kind of innate in human nature, or maybe in American American society that, you know, kind of deep down you want to be a hero or a heroine or rescued by a hero or a heroine.
Because we hold them in esteem. Because they are our
But I think what
heroes.
he's
But
saying
if you
is, I
think-
think that's just our nature to want to be.
I think it's our
We wanna have
generation and
somebody good come to
older's
the rescue.
nature. I think if you look at like Brian, he probably would have a whole different perspective because we have instilled that in our children to think that those stories are neat, and you know we grew up with it, so we kind of do that with them.
Do we feel that may be a little bit of a problem with our younger generation, that they have not been able to experience that? I think
No, I think it's the middle. I don't think it's the littles.
We had such creative minds because we had to come up all these crazy games that we played. That it was I'm 58 years old, so that was a huge learning tool for us.
Well, I think that imagination has definitely, not in all kids, but they don't have anything that they have to imagine.
Right.
Everything is on their phone or their tablet or their computer, and yeah, you don't. I mean, I will tell you, my son had the hardest time using his imagination to play. He was an only child, and he was always around adults. There weren't any kids that were close to his age. So, you know, we would play with him, but he couldn't just go and play by himself.
And he could have G.I. Joes and little soldiers like we did and things like that.
Well, I mean, we gave him all of that stuff, but he
it's
really
difficult when
didn't
you don't
know.
have somebody to play with him.
Right. So even now, I don't know that he would just come up with something to do on his own. When he has free time, he immediately goes to the computer. So, you know, and my daughter is a little bit different. You know, she had my son, and my niece and nephew are closer in her age, so she had other kids to play with. And she can use her, she has an imagination like you wouldn't believe. So I think there's many factors in it, and I don't really know. But I really think it is because of how we were raised and what we had to do and the limitations of the things that we had. We could take two sticks and figure out, let's play swords. You know, most kids nowadays are like, what do you want me to do with this stick?
Yeah,
You know?
That's always been one of my comments. You can take a stick and a rock and do something with it.
Yeah. It's funny because growing up, I was an only child, but, but I was also part of a generation where, like you say, your mom was like, go, get out of this house, go and play. And so you found the other kids and you played and you used your imagination and you went and you explored and I think the moment it became kind of too dangerous to let your kids that far out of your sight,
It's a bad thing.
yeah, their imaginations suffered for it.
Yeah,
because they
that's a bad thing.
couldn't just go and explore. Like we would okay, so I'm originally from Chicago. If anybody out there in podcast land has not heard this before, but so we lived on 63rd Street. The beach was on 53rd Street. And probably, so that's 10 blocks. So it's probably five or 6 blocks over and 10 blocks up. We would walk there almost every day in the summertime. No parental supervision whatsoever. Like I say, it's us on our bikes.
But that's where the girls were.
Exactly. But also that whole walk and everything from the house to the beach was just a huge exploration.
Jiving and talking with each other, giving each other crap.
So, and I have to definitely admit, growing up, You know, and I think part of it was being an only child. I definitely had quite an imagination, you know.
So that's the difference of growing up in our time and growing up in, because Austin will be 24 this year. So by then, there were other things to keep him occupied.
Yeah.
You also formed friendships.
Oh, absolutely.
Differently, because it was just me and my sister. So my male friendships were pretty tight because I didn't have a brother, and you didn't have a brother. So
Right.
you go to look for your crew every day. Who am I going to get together with my crew and raise some hell with, have some fun with?
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
And if we got in trouble, our parents generally knew it before we got home. That's what sucked.
Yeah.
It seems like now if you're being creative, you're creating something like an app or a
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
You're right.
Something that you can make money off of.
Yeah, there is imagination, but
It's not superheroes and
yeah, and I wonder, like, once again, is the generation suffering because of that? Because yes, they're using their imagination for like commercial gain, but you know, so many of the younger, you know, it's, you know, especially guys and girls in their 20s, they really can only talk to themselves.
so
Like they just don't know how to intergenerationally talk. They don't know how to really, you know, talk, you know, guys to girls, and like they're very not in, and I won't say it's bad, but it's very different than, you know, how we came up.
There's a commercial out there where four of them are sitting there and they're texting, and the announcer or whoever's talking to them says, "You ever thought about talking to each other?" And they all pause and look and go, "Yeah, right," and go back to texting.
Yeah.
You know, this is who they are nowadays. Where, you know, we had what we called, and this is where the term rap came from. We used to have rap sessions. In the 60s and 70s, a rap session. We'd all sit around and talk to each other. And we got a little older, sometimes we smoke a little bit and sit around, talk to each other, and you talk so much that you forget what the hell you were
Talking about. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
kids nowadays, I know we're kind of getting off topic a little bit. They don't know how to have face-to-face dialogue. They can talk to you all day long through text and
Yeah.
email and, oh my God, email.
Yeah.
They don't email.
Yeah.
Text and Snapchat.
Yeah.
That, you know, but you try to sit down and have a face-to-face eye contact conversation with people, and they don't know what to do, what to say, how to talk.
I saw a video, it was on my timeline, and this guy wanted to do a study of old-fashioned, just approaching a girl, asking her out.
Yeah.
And he wanted to see how many girls would actually say yes. None of them said yes. They thought it was so weird that he would just approach them and
Right.
just say, "Hey, what's up? I think you're pretty.
Right.
Would you like to go out?"
Yeah.
And a lot of them were just like, "Are you on Tinder? Are you on Match? Are you on," you know, because everybody's got so accustomed to.
Yeah, doing it
No,
through the
I'm
app.
actually meeting you. Like, you
Right.
can say no to me right here.
Right here.
You
Right.
don't have to swipe left.
Right. You don't have to swipe. You can just say,
It was crazy.
no, thank you.
Right. Well, they all said no because they thought he was weird for
Well,
approaching them
yeah,
and
exactly.
wanting to go out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know how much imagination it takes to approach somebody?
Yeah.
Imagination, that would be courage.
Well, both. I mean, you've got to come up with something clever and funny and the whole smitty, and you have to have enough courage to do it.
Right.
And yeah, I just, you know. Okay, so here's the other thing that I was thinking. For as much imagination as maybe this generation isn't exhibiting, they're also exhibiting a ton of imagination. Because when we were growing up, there was no such a thing as like comicCon. You know, where they, I mean, because to this day, I don't think
We were
that
in our 20s when Comic-Con came around.
yeah, but we were already in our 20s. By that time, whoever you are is formed at that point. You know, so now, you know,
Sure.
for the most part, you know what I mean? But, you know, now, you know, these same, you know, kids who can't talk to each other will get dressed up in costume and go to a mass gathering of other people dressed up in costume
That don't talk to each other.
that don't talk to each other to worship their kingdom of imagination. But it all boils back down to they're dressing up like heroes. They're dressing up like
Comic-Con, right?
fairy tale characters. They're dressing up at this point like video game characters.
Well, you just look at cosplay in general, because that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it is a different. They're taking. Again, it's more of the cartoons and more of the things that they see on a day-to-day basis. Then you see more of that than you do. Now, there's always going to be the Princess Leia in her.
Jabba slave costume.
Yeah, you're always going to see that, but I mean, it's a lot of anime and
I saw something interesting yesterday while I was watching the football games. 2 movie trailers. And the movies were totally about games, the games that they play and the type of characters that are in the games. And they're literally taking the games they play and making movies out of them.
Yeah.
And of course, I think you just had Creed Assassin not long ago came out, but they are literally now making movies about the very games they play.
Oh yeah.
I find that a little disturbing myself.
Well,
that's not
It's
new
actually
because
not, yeah.
wasn't Doom, Tron.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was another one.
Yeah, it truly all
into
started. Yeah, it actually was made into a game.
Dune was a game.
I believe so.
Doom
Yeah.
was a game. Doom was a game.
Those were
That
books
was-
that we read back in the day.
Yeah.
Dune was a very interesting novel.
So has it gotten to a point now, and from Hollywood's perspective, as far as their creativity and their imagination, they're running out of ideas for movies?
I think they're coming back because if you remember, like if you look over the last 3 or 4 years, there were a lot of remakes of movies,
which actually
and
was
a lot
kind
of
of my
sequels
next
to
topic.
movies
Yeah.
instead of new content. And I think now you're starting to see that again. Although you're always going to see books that were. I mean, they're getting ready to do A Wrinkle in Time, but it's
the Will Smith Netflix movie that was released.
Bright.
Yeah, that seems like the new trend. Everything going straight to Netflix.
Yes.
That's kind of the new motion picture setup, I guess.
yeah. Well,
Personally, I'm disappointed in the creativity of Hollywood anymore because they really, besides some of the Marvel movies they've come out with, their creativity right now is horrible.
Well, I can say that when you look at like Michael Bay and J.J. Abrams, they tend to try to do old school meshed with new school
Technology.
But you look at like even the Star Wars, the more CGI you get, the less people like it. I mean, it's really hard. It's really hard to blend CGI to where you can't tell that that's what it is.
I didn't like Rogue One that much. I thought it was disjointed at times. I thought the end scene where they died together was well done. But Rogue One...
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, for anybody out there who hasn't seen Rogue One. And 2, this will be the last time that you hear Big Dave on the podcast because I'm a massive Star Wars fan and love Rogue One.
You have to... but there's you are in...
Now get out.
You are in the minority of people. Most people have...
I am. I would agree.
Yeah, most people have liked Rogue One and didn't like The Last Jedi.
Oh, yeah.
It was Last Jedi.
No. You're talking about Rogue One.
Okay.
You're talking about the scene where they... Yeah.
That shows you how confused I am.
But people forget that is a between movie.
Yeah,
it bridges the gap of what happened. So none of those characters were ever going to make it
I just thought they spent
any
way
further.
too much time on Luke Skywalker and being pissy about not wanting to be a bad
Well, now you're blending. Now that is
Last Jedi.
But why? That's the whole point.
I know. But
That's the whole point of the movie.
I thought they spent way too much time on him being pissy. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I think Star Wars in general could be its own podcast.
Well, yeah, and spoiler alert, it will be a podcast because I personally really want to talk about it because, not to give too much about what I want to talk about, but I will say there was a lot of people who really didn't like The Last Jedi. I think that they misunderstood the point of The Last Jedi.
I agree.
But
I'll tell you,
we will talk about that
excuse me,
in a future podcast because, matter of fact, we may talk about that next podcast because it really does tie into this idea of heroes. Growing up, I was a massive. Anything with a hero, I was massive. I was a fan of. Massive fan of Star Wars. Still am. But I also loved G.I. Joe. I loved Transformers. I loved He-Man. I loved Thundercats. So anything with a hero that I can go outside and pretend to be, I was down all the way down. And as I got older, a little bit older, a little bit older teenager, got into James Bond and started watching the old James Bond movies and realized how cool James Bond is. Tell you, biggest thing for me, Skyfall. When Skyfall came out, the trailer came out for Skyfall, and he jumped off of. You couldn't tell what he jumped off of, but he jumped into the train car as the back of it was being ripped off and just adjusted his cufflinks. I thought it was the coolest thing I ever seen in my life. And that was just a couple years ago. So,
in podcast land,
yes,
it would take Mario's friends 15 minutes every day to figure out who the hell he was.
I'll tell you what I'm super excited for is Black Panther.
Super excited
for many reasons, but I think that it's really awesome that they have. I could just not know, but I think it's really amazing that they have a mostly African American cast, all the main characters.
Yeah,
I think that
Black
is.
Panther.
Yeah, some actually African.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see that.
I mean, it's a great storyline. But I'm really excited for that.
First black superhero. Anybody out there in podcast land who doesn't know, Black Panther was the first black superhero, period. And
that wasn't like already somebody else. Like you have like Green Lantern. There's multiple Green Lanterns.
But the actual first
superhero.
Yeah, superhero that was a black character was, which is why. I was so overjoyed when they decided they were going to bring Black Panther into the Avengers storyline all together.
I think they have a really amazing cast too. Honestly, I mean they.
Yeah, I mean, the guy himself playing Black Panther, then Michael B. Jordan playing Jaguar. You got Lupita Nyong'o playing. So
that's what we're doing for Valentine's Day. Anybody out there unfamiliar with the Black Panther storyline? It's set in an African country called Wakanda, and the royal guard of Wakanda is all female. She plays one of the head spies of. They just need to do their research on Black Panther and.
Yeah.
Their country.
Yeah,
all of it.
Please Google it. If you haven't seen anything about it, go watch the trailers. I think you'll be as excited and blown away as we are.
It is kind of funny though, because I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today about I don't really care if I go to the movies and see what most people consider a chick flick or a rom-com or something like that, but I want to see the action movies at the movies.
Yes.
On the big screen. Like, I want to see the superheroes up there and, larger than life. Like, I can sit on the couch and watch my chick flick.
Look, there was a point when Transformers came out. There was a point in the movie that I was 10 years old again. I mean,
When
like
Optimus
my
Prime.
my heart was as full as it could be as a human being to hear Optimus Prime speak. And it was Optimus Prime. It was his voice, the voice from the cartoon that I grew up watching all those years ago.
I can collaborate or confirm that because
my God, it was amazing.
Mario was like,
Yeah.
literally.
Oh yeah, like I go right. I can't. Well, one, it's the same dude. Like I can't believe that he's still alive. Two, to see live action Optimus Prime on the big screen was just amazing.
And if you think about it, they didn't show you each individual piece moving and transforming in that movie. I mean, you saw them transform, but you didn't see the close-up pieces moving until they showed Optimus.
Yes. And then, you start just seeing individual gears turn, and you're just like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And, which gets me to my point. These characters are not new. We're all, 40s plus at this table, and we're talking about characters that have stuck with us for decades.
But that's why, because we were children when we saw them. So when you see it when you're older, it is it does. People like, for the most part, to be taken back to things that they loved when they were children.
Yeah, you want to relive that stuff. And you relive the good parts of it, not the bad parts.
Right.
You know what's funny? I was thinking about even, like the remakes for, all the Disney movies like Cinderella and
the live action.
Yeah, all the live action. I mean, like these movies blow out at the box office because there was something about these stories that just stuck with us. They stuck with people, and I remember those comic books. I remember those toys. I remember those cartoons. I remember all the Disney stories growing up. And so now.
But don't we like things that are fantastical?
My point. It's like, to even think for a moment that you could do something fantastical,
So I think in that's why Harry Potter was so amazing to our children's
I got into Harry
generation.
Potter. I surprised myself.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're like hardcore religious and it was just of the devil, but I mean it.
And then I say to them, open your mind a little bit, have some fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, there definitely was some people who were like, "Oh, it's witchcraft and sorcery."
Well, it was witchcraft and sorcery.
Yeah,
I mean, they didn't hide it.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Lord of the
Yeah,
Rings.
they didn't hide that. I have a hard time. Well, I guess there were sorcerers in it.
Well, I guess I will say for this
The
generation.
medieval times were witchcraft and sorcery.
Yeah, I think for this generation growing up, the millennial generation and younger, I think, the things that they grew up with, we were adults. So we liked it, but we didn't care as much. Like they really love, which is why it's on rerun all the time. They love the Harry Potter movies. They love the Lord of the Rings movies. Like Austin to this day, who is 6'2" or whatever, looks like a Viking. He loves dinosaurs. Loves dinosaurs because Jurassic Park captured his imagination as a kid. And
oh yeah, I mean he couldn't even talk yet.
Yeah.
And he's loved dinosaurs that long.
Yeah, and to us, we're thinking, oh, Jurassic Park is overdone. And he's like, there's a new Jurassic Park movie coming out.
Oh, no. When they pulled up with the Jeep and the animals are out there running and they move like birds.
Oh, yeah.
Where they would move together.
Oh,
Remember that scene?
Oh, yeah.
And you saw that and it was just like, wow, man, that's cool. Because not only are we seeing something that's beyond our thoughts that we were taught about,
So, you
But
know.
they're tying it in the birds, and they've always said the dinosaurs. So they tied it into the scientific aspect, and then also the fantasy of actually seeing what dinosaurs ran like. It was pretty cool.
It's actually funny, you know, nothing to do with birds, but tying things into the realistic. That's one of the reasons I love the. I actually like the current Batman Superman stuff, but the Christian Bale series, the Dark Knight series of Batman movies. That's why I love those so much. I was a massive Batman fan growing up, but seeing him actually attached to the real world, like his gadgets weren't some overly fantastical thing. They were developed for a purpose, just never used for that purpose. And so Batman was able to take the tumbler and make that the Batmobile, and take something that was meant for maybe military paratroopers, but overly expensive for a military paratrooper. So he used that for his cape and bat wings, and his bodysuit was actually made as military body armor, but it would have cost $100,000 per soldier. So they were like, okay, we're not going to do that. So them tying it all into realistic things made that series so great to me, because it wasn't all of a sudden a comic book. Once again, it was the possibility of doing something fantastical in the world we know, and which, you know, all of these things. And I think the thing that got me to thinking about it again was, I think, in the same day, like we were just at home over the weekend, and I wasn't feeling too good on Sunday, but the day before we kind of laid around and didn't do anything. So within the same weekend, wound up seeing Skyfall, you know, James Bond Skyfall, and Cinderella in the same weekend on TV. But it got me to thinking about just these stories. Like I said, once again, they're not new. You know, Ian Fleming started writing these books, you know, 80 years ago or something crazy, and we has 70 years ago.
Mario got all the James Bond movies for Christmas.
And we've been, you know, and we've had now 50 plus years of James Bond movies, you know, just
That's crazy to think about it in its own right.
Yeah.
Well, I remember watching James Bond movies with like Goldfinger and,
oh yeah,
you know, I remember watching those when I was little. Like, my parents didn't really, I mean, if they were watching it, we were watching it, you know.
Yeah, you didn't have a lot of choices.
But
you also
they weren't always great movies.
As a family, you sat down and watched things, though, because you did have a limited amount of channels.
Yeah.
And especially like on Sunday nights. And we used to go to the grandparents and I had to watch Lawrence Welk.
So switch gears slightly. You got Black Panther coming out, and you have, just a few days before that, the last part of 50 Shades coming out. Is that fantastical? Wait, what's the big difference between? Well, I know there's the hero side, and there's this swagged out.
You're just fantastic.
That's just
James
fantasy,
Bond.
yeah.
Okay. That's just
fantasy.
And they released,
which is fantastical for most people.
Yeah.
I believe they released all of the 50 Shades on Valentine's Day. All three of them. You did know there were three, right?
No.
There are three. This is the
the
last
third,
one.
Yes.
I know this. He's got major swag,
A lot of money.
and he has some extracurricular stuff he likes to do.
I don't know if he has major swag, but
Got a lot of money.
he's got a lot of money.
You know what your first 50 Shades was? I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was Mickey O'Rourke and Kim Basinger. What was the name of that movie?
Oh, yeah.
Basinger?
Kim Basinger. Was that 9.5 weeks?
9.5 weeks
Or was that
I want to say it was based in Brazil for some reason.
I know what movie you're
It's
talking about.
scary that you three know what it is, and I've never even heard of it.
It was
Yeah,
a wicked good movie, wasn't it? But it was kind of that thing where You know, he was a bad dude, and she
something.
had this attraction to him, and it was similar to 50 Shades in a lot of ways.
I know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
but I cannot think of the name.
And
of
that
it.
was 25 years ago.
Yeah, but I still want to say it was 9.5 weeks, but I could be wrong. But yeah, Mickey.
9.5 weeks.
That sounds right. That sounds right.
9.5 weeks. That was it.
Yeah, I just remember back in the day it was so like they were like almost they wanted to give it an X rating, but so they had to cut it down enough to get an
How
R.
long ago was it? Like when we were?
Oh, it was in the 80s, yeah.
Nowadays it'd be a straight R. I mean, it would be
Yeah.
close to being close to an X-rated movie.
Yeah, that's when-
mature audience or what.
They're trying to kick off Fatal Attraction and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's kind of like, yeah, you watch it, but that's a private party.
Sorry.
Last Tango in Paris, another one comes to mind.
Oh,
Marlon Brando.
Last Tango in Paris.
That did get an X rating.
Yep, 9.5 weeks.
Because me and Eddie Meyer sat on the railroad tracks at the drive-in theater when we were 14.
I guess. Dang. I'm just looking at the
At the movie poster?
and they moved it. Never mind.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That wasn't going to sound good no matter how I said it.
So, with all that said, we
This
actually
is really like shocking that this came out in the 80s because it was just about
it was
a woman gets involved in an impersonal affair with a man. That's the
Yep.
first line.
Yep. And it was.
So this is the original 50 Shades of Grey.
yeah.
It really was. That's why it came to my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm proud my mind isn't that far diseased.
Hey.
Stuck with you, huh?
Yeah.
Every once in a while I get recalled. It's a wonderful
We was,
thing.
we was trying to learn some things.
Yeah. All right. So, with all that, we definitely could talk for a long time about this particular subject because I do think that
Good subject.
more things fall into this category than my original thought process. But I do think that maybe it is slightly generational, the things that capture your imagination on that level. But I do think that it is kind of human nature to attach to story. I think that's one of the reasons why we still love movies and plays, and is because we really do attach to story in a way that other species just they don't attach to it in the same way, and maybe even other cultures don't attach to it in the same way, but I do think that it's interesting that whether it's a superhero or a fairy tale or a cartoon or
I think you can do it with reading though too. I mean, you just get
you get sucked in. And, yeah. With all that, we'll be right back. Hey, you having a good time? Let me introduce you to a couple of my media brothers. First, www.americathemixtape.com, a cipher on American politics, society, and culture. And where'd I get that mixtape? Of course, www.cornerbodega.us, purveyors of urban culture. Come on, let's get back to the party. And we are back, and before we get out of here, let's talk about today's Sugar Honey Iced Tea. And for those that don't know, these are things that I or a member of the group have found that are really cool, aka the shit. And today's Sugar Honey Iced Tea is imagination. Full disclosure, originally I was going to end with the Sugar Honey Iced Tea being superheroes. But I think more broadly, it's less about superheroes and more about the imagination. You know, the reason that you love James Bond and, you know, Batman and Superman and Spider-Man and, you know, all of the, you know, Disney stories and princesses and, you know, is because they evoke a sense of imagination in you. You know, like I said a little earlier in the podcast, you know, just hearing the voice of the guy who voiced the cartoon character in live action on the movie screen sparked my imagination in crazy ways and brought me back to, you know, being a little boy. And I think, you know, being a creative in general, and, you know, being a content creator and, you know, a musician and, you know, all of those things for me brings me back to having imagination. And, you know, and that's something that I cherish dearly because, you know, at this point in my life, it's very easy to kind of fall into, you know, the everyday ruts and struggles, and we all do to some degree. But the one thing that I can say that I've kept is my imagination. You know, I can still see things that aren't there and create stories that weren't there before. And of course, you know, I'm not running around the house with a sheet tied around my neck for a cape, but there is a part of me, and I dare say a part of everybody at the table, and I dare say a part of everybody out there in podcast land that still cherishes that part of themselves, that imagination, that thing that keeps you youthful despite everything in the world that's trying to grow you up. And with that, I'm going to end this podcast in the way I end all podcasts, and that is with the toast that started it all for me, and that is to good times with good people.